The Fraser Estuary is really special because it's home to a huge diversity of salmon and other species that come from throughout the Fraser watershed, which takes up a quarter of British Columbia, and they all have to come through the Fraser Estuary on their way out to the ocean.
The Fraser is one of our most productive salmon watersheds, and they're all working their way down, and to continue their ocean journey and migrations, they've got to move through the Fraser Estuary.
The Fraser Estuary has been modified over time and has a number of different jetties and other man-made structures which were put in place to facilitate human activities such as shipping. Naturally, the mouth of the river would meander over time, but that's not very convenient for deep-sea shipping.
Right now we're on the Steveston Jetty, which was built about 100 years ago to train the main arm of the Fraser River and make it easier for ships to navigate into the river. And what this jetty did, even though it certainly served its purpose to aid the navigation of vessels, was also become a barrier to the natural movement of those salmon coming down from the watershed and wanting to rear and grow and avoid predators and spend time in the estuary. So there's just one little spot at the very beginning of this jetty where salmon can make an exit and get onto Sturgeon Bank, into the marsh, which is where they want to be. And if they miss that exit, they have no choice but to end up pretty much in Georgia Strait. When if you're this big, it's a place that you don't want to be. It's full of predators, the water's too deep, it's too salty, and doesn't have the conditions that they need to rear and feed.
Raincoast, working with Fisheries and Oceans Canada, decided that it would be a good idea to try to create some openings in the Steveston Jetty. And our idea was that if we just remove some of the rock, just take away some of the jetty, the natural flow of the river will create some channels through those openings and really create a much more natural system than what we have here.
So in February of this year, we started with big cranes and barges and removing the physical rock and old wood and material that was in place at the hard parts of the jetty. So that's the approach that we're taking. Just get the rock out of the way and nature will do the rest. There's a lot of fish in that net. I got one. He's a juvenile Chinook and he is 57 millimeters long and 9 millimeters wide. Okay, so the Chinook is 57 by 8. In this case, where we're catching them right in this moment, they're moving through one of the breaches that we created in February. So last year, or any year in the last 100, if he'd reached this point in the river, he would have had no choice but to go all the way to Georgia Strait. He wouldn't have been able to make the exit that he just made to get over to the marsh in Sturgeon Bank.
The fact that we're catching juvenile salmon, moving through those breaches right away really shows that there was a need for that. Without those breaches, all those salmon would have got pushed out into the Strait of Georgia. So we're really seeing that this is having the effect that we intended and that it was necessary. It's really great to see that.
We are enhancing the habitat of the southern resident killer whale's primary prey. And if we have hope for the recovery of these whales into the future, it is through the recovery of the Chinook salmon that they rely on, especially when they come into the Salish Sea to feed. So this is the first step in a long-term plan to restore habitat of juvenile Chinook. And it's the best investment that we can make in terms of the long-term health, productivity, and resilience of Chinook salmon.
We've been really happy to see that doing a connectivity restoration project has shown some really positive results. Doing this kind of project is great because you can just facilitate salmon access into good habitat that already exists. So we think that the focus on trying to restore natural processes, the natural flow of water and sediment, is a good way forward.